The sky was a pallid gray when James Dunne stumbled upon the old, abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The dilapidated mansion stood at the end of a long, forgotten road, shrouded in a thick fog that seemed to cling to the decrepit structure like a shroud. James had been wandering aimlessly, looking for inspiration to cure his persistent writer's block, when the mansion's foreboding silhouette beckoned him closer. He was a struggling writer, desperate for a breakthrough, and the sight of the grand yet crumbling edifice stirred something within him. With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, he pushed open the creaking iron gate and made his way up the weed-choked path to the front door. The door, surprisingly, was unlocked, and it groaned in protest as he pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The dim light that filtered through the grimy windows revealed an interior frozen in time. Furniture draped in white sheets, tarnished chandeliers, and faded portraits on the walls hinted at the mansion's former glory. James explored room after room, each more fascinating and eerie than the last, until he reached the library. The library was vast, with floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with ancient tomes. As James scanned the rows of books, something caught his eye: a manuscript lying on a grand oak desk in the center of the room. It was bound in dark leather, its cover devoid of any title. Intrigued, he picked it up and began to read. The manuscript was an untitled horror novel, and the prose was unlike anything James had ever encountered. The story was about a small town plagued by a series of gruesome, supernatural events. As he read, he felt a chill run down his spine. The writing was so vivid, so disturbingly real, that he could almost hear the screams of the characters and feel their terror. James couldn't put the manuscript down. He took it home and spent the next few days engrossed in its dark tale. The more he read, the more the line between fiction and reality began to blur. The manuscript described events in such detail that they seemed to leap off the pages. One evening, as James sat in his dimly lit apartment, he read a passage about a violent storm that struck the town, causing widespread destruction. At that moment, the wind outside his window began to howl, and the sky darkened ominously. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and soon a torrential downpour began, mirroring the storm in the manuscript. Startled, James set the manuscript aside and peered out the window. The storm was real, and it was fierce. He couldn't shake the feeling that the manuscript was somehow influencing reality. The next day, he read about a mysterious illness that swept through the town, causing several deaths. That evening, James received a call from a friend, informing him that a rare and deadly virus had been reported in the city. Panic began to set in. James realized that the events described in the manuscript were manifesting in the real world. He decided to stop reading, but a strange compulsion drove him back to it. The manuscript seemed to have a hold on him, an unbreakable grip that tightened with every page he turned. Determined to uncover the origins of the manuscript, James returned to the abandoned mansion. He combed through the library, searching for clues, and eventually stumbled upon a hidden compartment in the desk where he had found the manuscript. Inside, he discovered a bundle of old letters and a journal. The letters were correspondence between the mansion's original owner, a reclusive writer named Edgar Blackwood, and his publisher. They revealed that Blackwood had been working on a horror novel before his untimely death. The novel the letters suggested was not just a work of fiction but a transcription of horrifying visions Blackwood claimed to have experienced. The journal provided even more disturbing insights. Blackwood wrote about a demonic entity that visited him in his dreams, whispering dark secrets and showing him visions of terror. He believed the entity was guiding his hand as he wrote, infusing the manuscript with its malevolent power. Blackwood became increasingly paranoid and erratic, convinced that the entity was not confined to his dreams but was slowly manifesting in the real world. One final entry, dated the night before his death, described Blackwood's desperate attempt to destroy the manuscript. He believed that if the manuscript was completed, the entity would fully cross over into the physical world, unleashing untold horrors. Blackwood's body was found the next morning, his heart stopped by an apparent heart attack, and the manuscript was left unfinished. James returned home with the letters and journal, his mind racing. He was now certain that the manuscript was cursed and that the entity described by Blackwood was real. He knew he had to find a way to stop it, but he had no idea how. That night, he dreamed of the entity, a shadowy, faceless figure that loomed over him, its presence suffocating and malevolent. It whispered to him, promising power and success if he would only finish the manuscript. James awoke in a cold sweat, the entity's words echoing in his mind. He realized that the manuscript's hold on him was growing stronger. He tried to resist, but the compulsion to write was overwhelming. He found himself sitting at his desk, the manuscript before him, his pen moving as if guided by an unseen hand. Days turned into nights as James feverishly worked on the manuscript. The entity's presence became more tangible, its whispers more insistent. The events described in the manuscript grew more horrific, and James could feel the boundary between fiction and reality disintegrating. One night, as James neared the manuscript's climax, the entity appeared before him. It was no longer just a shadow but a fully formed figure, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. It spoke to him, its voice a chilling blend of malice and seduction. "Finish it," the entity commanded. "Complete the tale and set me free." James knew that if he finished the manuscript, the entity would be unleashed upon the world. But the entity's power was too great, its hold on him too strong. As he wrote the final pages, the horrors described in the manuscript began to manifest around him. Shadows twisted and writhed. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and blood-curdling screams echoed through his apartment. With the last of his willpower, James stopped writing and threw the manuscript into the fireplace. Flames engulfed the pages, and the entity screamed in rage. The fire roared, consuming the cursed tome, and James felt the entity's grip weaken. But it was not enough. The entity lashed out in desperation, and James collapsed to the floor, his body racked with pain. As his vision dimmed, he saw the entity's form begin to dissolve, its power waning as the manuscript turned to ash. With his last breath, James whispered a prayer, hoping that his sacrifice would be enough to banish the entity forever. Months later, the abandoned mansion was sold to a developer who planned to renovate it into a bed and breakfast. During the renovations, workers discovered a hidden compartment in the library. Inside, they found a charred manuscript, its pages blackened but still intact. Curious, the developer took the manuscript to a local historian, who recognized it as the work of the long-deceased writer Edgar Blackwood. The historian was fascinated by the tale of the cursed manuscript. Unbeknownst to them, the entity still lingered, its essence bound to the remnants of the manuscript. It waited patiently, biding its time, ready to ensnare a new victim and complete its dark purpose. And so, the cycle of horror began anew, with the cursed manuscript lying in wait for the next unwitting soul to uncover its sinister secrets.